things are going to start happening to me now.
I think Tyler is amazing.
And I'm a fan of this show. I've watched several episodes.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Tyler. You stink, Tyler.
Never promise crazy a baby.
Oh, I like that. That's a cool idea.
Are either of you homosexuals?
I go both ways. What do you think?
You mean like flaming or?
No, we're not homosexual, but we are willing to learn.
But I do wonder for others in other cases whether libertarianism today is just an excuse for many on the right to act selfishly.
Then some fat asses in Washington started having opinions. The Olympic Committee started having opinions. You bitch, I know you! You started writing your opinions.
And it just makes me wonder, you're dead, bitch. You know, why are you doing this to this poor guy?
I don't care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
We're back, I think. I hope so. Let me double check on everywhere else. Let me know how the audio is. Rand's a little loud in the background. I think what happened, but give me some feedback here, people. JC's in the chat. Why don't you let me know if it's working, JC? That would be number one. And then we can go from there. What I wanted to do is go over this Leticia James Comey stuff, give you a little legal breakdown. Someone said when I went first, here's what I think happened. I was trying to use Rumble Studio, push it out via OBS, and when I did that, it was having trouble starting. It was having trouble going. And I think that's the problem. So I did a record real quick. It appears that was fine. So maybe, let's see, maybe I'll play this on here and see where we're at itself. Yep, okay, it sounds like it's possibly okay. I don't know. You guys let me know. I don't think I'm gonna be able to have the chat displayed here today. Let me double check here. You good, you said? Okay. Let's see the chat settings. Trying to pop it out because I'm only able to see it on Restream. So maybe we'll put it over here and we'll be able to do that. I'm just not gonna be able to display it here this morning just for the way that some things went down. But anyway, let me get you up real quick to speed. So we got Def Not Eric Dubé in the chat. JC's over here. Thanks for coming in. We're going to do a little legal analysis here real quick. I did my last episode. I put effort into it. Okay, I pre-recorded it. I had clips, everything I wanted to go in there, and it's not doing well numbers-wise. I thought I put a lot of effort into it. Basically, the idea of the Jonathan Pollard, just talking about the spine and how we used to take that, I think, a little bit more seriously, but I think everything is political, which makes you wonder if you even cared about the spine. Dave Smith talked about this a little bit on his last episode, talking about Jonathan Pollard. And remember, the allegations is this guy sold Soviets secrets from the U.S., sold it to Israel, who then sold it to the Soviets. And we're like, we're good. And these are you've got to take this from the perspective of your super patriotic, right? Ted Cruz's, Mike Huckabee's, and those kind of people. They don't give a shit. It's really not that they just don't give a shit at all. And so as long as you understand that, and I think that, why does my phone keep trying to connect to this computer? As long as you understand that, you're going to be at least in a better position too. Okay. James Comey, a former head of the FBI, goes before Congress, almost 5 years ago, and essentially lies, okay? Then there, Leticia James, she's the prosecutor there in New York that took Trump to court. She did some lying about her stuff. So the DOJ comes in and, honestly, it's nice. I don't have a problem going after, perjurers. I wish we would a little bit more, but why not Brennan? I mean, maybe that's too long. I guess there's a statute of limitations there of like 5 years, so they're trying to get him in here. So I don't have a problem going after some people lying before Congress. I mean, that would be nice if they did that more often. Fauci, how about Fauci? Why is he not being indicted here, right? But they go after Comey, okay, because it's personal to Trump. And they go after James because it's personal to Trump. It does seem a little bit sketchy. with that in mind, though, there was some technical issues. Now, if you've got to be on the up and up as the prosecutors, right? You can't just say, oh, we're going to just, for technical reasons, you get cases dismissed. I've done it many times myself. Some people just don't do it right. And then you go, well, this is the statute that we're under. And here is the Constitution. Here's whatever it is that we're following along. And you've got to adhere to that. And if you don't, we're going to get it kicked out and you're going to do it properly. Statute of limitations is one of those as an example. So they filed this thing to Comey. I think they had 5 days left. You don't then just get to go, what if they filed it 10 days later and it's past the statute of limitations and the judge kicks it out? Okay. Is that a legitimate reason? And the reason I'm going over this is because I'm seeing some people online. Of course, it's a liberal judge. She's doing all this. It's if you weren't pathetic, it's like a cop going in, has the body cam footage on and he's planting evidence, or you're doing some other. It's like it's going to get thrown out. If you do some shit, maybe it's the bad guy, right? But you're like, I'm going to try to get him on this, and then they get let off on a technicality. You're just like, okay, well, was it worth it? Maybe you felt it was. Okay, so we're going to walk into some of this. And this is honestly what I believe some of this has to do with. Don't forget to like and subscribe the episode. Also, go to Substack. It's tyleryonke.substack.com. I don't have my name displayed up here on this one. I got to get my studio at work a little bit better off, I think, here. Okay, so let's maybe we take a look here right away, because there's a few different takes on this, and let's see if I go on this one first. I haven't really adjusted my browser, but this is Reason Magazine. They're saying federal judge dismisses Comey and James indictment, saying Trump's U.S. attorney appointment was illegal. Now, illegal? I may have some gripes with how that is actually termed. Let's actually, oops, when I want to do this here, let's actually move this a little bit bigger. There we go. I think we can at least read that a bit better for everybody. We'll go through this. I'm not going to read all of this guy's, is this Eric Solom? Yeah, Solom, his critique on here, but there's some good stuff. And then I'm actually going to read off of National Review, because I think that one has a little bit better. It's Andrew McCarthy, who's a former federal prosecutor. You get a little bit in depth into the procedural issues. And I actually have do I have the indictment here? Let's take a look, the ruling. Here it is. Let's take a look here at this. Here's the actual ruling, and I'm going to go through. I'm not going to read it. It's 29 pages, but because I think that these news articles, from what I've read here, going through these, I think the news articles actually, and we're going to play a few little clips here. The news articles actually surmise and summarize it and just fine. Okay. On September 20, President Donald Trump announced that he had picked Lindsay Halligan. Now, Lindsay Halligan, by the way, it's an interesting little prospect for her. Let's go up here because I want to actually look and see if I have these on bookmarks. She evidently was like some sort of cheerleader chick. I don't have the tweet stuff about her. She was actually like Miss America or something like that. So people are like, is this kind of connections? Because Trump, you had the Miss America pageant stuff going on. So she's a very good looking woman, and here's what he likes to do. He likes to be Habanos or whatever that chick's name was. Kind of the hotties, there's the big titted one down there in Georgia going after Fannie Willis. Good-looking women to be attorneys. Now, the one down there in Florida or in Georgia, I think it was Georgia, yeah, she was actually a really good attorney. The one he had defending him up in New York, so. This one, I don't know. She was evidently a defense attorney. She'd never had any prosecutorial experience, which the judge actually pointed out in the ruling, which I don't know that really matters. Either you're getting appointed or not, okay? And you got to start somewhere. Either way, I don't think it's necessarily this lady's fault that this shit went sideways. But it is Comey, it is Pam Bondi's, okay? And we'll read here. He announced that he picked Lindsay Halligan, a former Trump defense lawyer with no prosecutorial experience, to replace Eric Siebert as the interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. Trump was displeased with Siebert because he was not inclined to prosecute two of Trump's, the president's, I'm having trouble reading already this morning, nemesis, former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Leticia James. Halligan showed no such reluctance, delivering a perjury and obstruction indictment of Comey 3 days after taking office and a mortgage fraud indictment of James 2 weeks later. On Monday, a federal judge dismissed both of those indictments without prejudice after concluding that Halligan had been illegally appointed. Now, I want to go out here. This without evidence without prejudice is important because it doesn't bar you from bringing up these same issues again. And we'll talk about the statute of limitations. Hey, they're past the statute of limitations. Can they still bring those up? We're going to talk about that a little bit here. Sexart says her being appointed improperly and judge kicking both over. It seems staged from both ends. I love that idea because you're pointing out some interesting parts there. It could be. Now, I don't, at this point, I'm not giving Trump and Comey much leeway. I think they've shown way too much that they stumble into good things and they stumble into bad things. I don't know that they are doing a lot, at least I don't have any reason here to be giving them much credibility as far as their competence. Okay, so her being appointed improperly, okay, there could have been some issues, and we talked about that. It's not even the appointment improperly. It's that by the time she backdated this to a certain time period, she had already filed the indictment, or went to the grand jury and got this. So it was actually too late at that point. So you can't do something, and we'll get to that. But I appreciate the comment there. But without prejudice means that they can bring these same causes and issues again. Okay, so if it's with prejudice, it means nope, we're done and over. You don't even get to bring these claims to the court again. So they can still bring those claims to the court. The question you should have, which doesn't get answered in Solom's, is can they still bring these same claims outside of the statute of limitations? Because remember, when they first filed them back in, was it September 20 or around that, or 25 or 30? The statute of limitations was about to run anyway, which is you'll have a certain time frame from the incident or when you knew it happened or when it did happen. In this case, we know the actual date and time that it happened because he perjured himself on the floor of Congress. That date, 5 years to the date, basically you have to bring a case to the court. We do this, not me specifically, with my law partner, because he does personal injury stuff. So it's often there's a case and there's an issue and they're trying to negotiate it, and sometimes he never has to file anything in court. It's just all done with the insurance, and you figure that out and you negotiate it away. But oftentimes, if nothing's being worked out, you then got to make sure that you're, not dropping your claim. So you file a motion or your petition, file a lawsuit, and now you could deal with it under that structure. Okay. Now you've got deadlines. Now you've got things people have to make work out. Otherwise, the other party, they don't want it. They just let it go. Okay. After concluding that Halligan had been illegally appointed, those decisions do put an end to the criminal case. Do not put an end to the criminal cases against Comey and James, since the Justice Department can refile the charges. But the grounds for dismissal reflect the grudge-motivated nature of both causes, which drove Trump and Halligan to take shortcuts that doom the indictments. And I will say this too, which is Comey has filed a motion to dismiss and some other stuff based on there. So I think it's 6 months that the DOJ has a time frame that they can refile these charges. So since there's time period that they have and Comey's motions are coming up here, DOJ might want to wait to refile until you hear, because if the court kicks it out on substantive issues as well, because this is just a procedural situation, if they kick it out on substantive issues as well, you might have a problem. Now, are they going to appeal this? That to me seems fine. Appeal it. And what do they say? Appeals are for losers, and that's perfect for Miss Bondi. I agree with Mr. This is a quote now. I agree with Mr. Comey that the Attorney General's attempt to install Miss Halligan as interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia was invalid. See, I like invalid rather than illegal. Illegal tends to mean that you would be able to arrest these people for their actions. So illegally appointed, I think invalidly appointed, okay? Halligan is the interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District was invalid. U.S. District Judge Cameron Curry writes, and because Ms. Halligan had no lawful authority to present the indictment, I will grant Mr. Comey's motion and dismiss the indictment without prejudice. See, that seems to me completely reasonable if you walk through the structure, and we're going to get there, so let me keep going. Curry reached the same conclusion in James' case. Comey and James argued that their indictments were invalid because Halligan's appointment violated 28 U.S.C. 546, which addresses vacancies in U.S. attorneys' offices. Now, you would imagine a vacancy and how it's appointed. This is either going to be laid out by Congress specifically, and there's probably details as to how this goes on. So you're not going to probably have it open to much interpretation. Okay, so this is a problem you have here. Precision of language. Yes, definitely not, Eric. That law authorizes the Attorney General to appoint a temporary replacement who could then serve no more than 120 days unless the judges of the district authorize an extension. Jessica Aber, who served as the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia during the Biden administration, resigned on January 20. She was replaced by Siebert, whose temporary appointment would have expired on May 21. But on May 9, the district's judges voted to let him remain in that position pending an appointment of a permanent U.S. attorney. After Trump pressured Siebert to resign, Attorney General Pam Bondi tried to restart the clock by appointing Halligan as an interim U.S. attorney. That maneuver, Comey's lawyers argued, was clearly inconsistent with the constraints imposed by Congress. In the text of Section 546 establishes a clear framework for the appointment of interim U.S. attorneys. They wrote in a motion filed on October 20, the Attorney General may appoint an interim U.S. attorney. Attorney General appointees may serve for 120 days following the Attorney General's invocation of her appointment authority. After that period expires, the district court for such districts may appoint a U.S. attorney to serve until the vacancy is filled. Seems pretty specific, okay? So I don't think you're going to get away with an appeal because you're not going to, because 120 days, as an example, is a very specific number. Okay, it's not ambiguous. That framework starts the clock for the time of the Attorney General's initial appointment of an interim U.S. attorney and limits the total tenure of the Attorney General's interim appointments to 120 days, the motion said. That is the only logical reading of the provision. If the Attorney General could make back-to-back sequential appointments of interim U.S. attorneys, the 120-day period would be rendered meaningless, and the Attorney General could indefinitely evade the alternate procedures that Congress mandated. The text thus precludes an additional appointment by the Attorney General after the expiration of that 120-day period. James's lawyers made the same argument in October 24 motion to dismiss her indictment. Albert Diaz, the Chief Judge of the U.S. Court of Appeals of the Fourth Circuit, appointed Curry, a senior judge of the U.S. District Court for the District of South Carolina, to resolve the dispute. Section 546 is unambiguous. There you go. That's those words I was talking about. Curry writes, and the text and structure of subsection D in particular make clear the appointment power shifts to the district court after the 120-day period and does not revert to the Attorney General. If the court-appointed U.S. attorney leaves office before a Senate-confirmed U.S. attorney is installed, subsection D specifies that what happens, quote, if the appointment by the Attorney General expires under subsection C2, end quote. In that case, the district court for such district may appoint a United States attorney to serve until the vacancy is filled. Given that phrasing, Curry said, the expiration of a single Attorney General appointment satisfies the condition. Thus, if, as here, a court-appointed U.S. attorney resigns, the district court retains the authority to make another interim appointment because the triggering event, the expiration of an appointment under subsection C2, has already occurred. Finally, the conjunction until in subsection D's main clause defines the duration of the district court's authority. It lasts from the moment the condition is first met to the time that the vacancy is filled by the Senate-confirmed appointee. Okay, I'm going to kind of stop on that because what I want to kind of talk about is, it looks like to me, because Pam Bondi comes in here and they try to backdate this thing to make it so it's legit, okay? The problem you're going to get, and you would have some sort of, I would hope, in this case, you would have some sort of analysis as to what the situation is, okay? Which is, let's do this legit at the time to make, and you're gonna have someone coming in saying, okay, a court may interpret it this way. Here's the actual rules. We're not going down those rules. We've got to either cure it now or not. Maybe they didn't have an opportunity. Maybe this is the best option that they had. In other words, which is, we've got to file it now. We've got to get it in before the statute of limitation runs. And then, and we'll talk about, do they have this ability? But they had to have an analysis at the time, they should have, of this may not go our way. This might be able to be kicked out on a technical basis. If that's the case, then what I would prefer that we're doing everything legit. Because you think the indictments should be able to come from the U.S. attorneys, right? Maybe Bondi has to do it herself from the DOJ. I don't know. You seem like you could have had a better option at the time to bring this case forward rather than it being kicked out because you're doing some willy-nilly shit. Is that the only person that could have indicted them? Was that one attorney general? Is that the only one? Let's keep going here. Bondi could not have authorized Ms. Halligan, who was not an attorney for the government at the time, to present Comey's indictment to the grand jury on September 25, Curry writes. The implications of contrary conclusions are extraordinary. It would mean the government could send any private citizen off the street, attorney or not, into the grand jury room to secure an indictment, so long as the attorney general gives her approval after the fact. That cannot be law. Crucially, Halligan was the sole prosecutor who sought and signed the indictments, which reflected internal skepticism about the cases. Based on the relevant Supreme Court precedents, Curry concludes that dismissal without prejudice is the appropriate remedy when, quote, an unconstitutionally appointed prosecutor exercising power she did not lawfully possess acts alone in conducting a grand jury proceeding and securing an indictment. So some of that analysis that could have taken place was no other AG had any interest in bringing this case forward. Could be. Trump's decision to replace Seibert and Halligan was desperate, more driven by personal vendettas. We can't delay any longer, he told Bondi on September 20 when he publicly ordered her to prosecute James and Comey. Justice must be served now. In Comey's case, which is tied to congressional testimony he gave on September 30, 2020, Halligan barely made the statutory deadline for filing charges. And in both cases, the charges were iffy that neither Seibert nor career prosecutors of his office were willing to worth pursuing. But for that resistance, Trump would not have felt compelled to make the appointment that Curry deemed illegal, and Halligan would have had some company in seeking the indictments, which would have prevented these embarrassing setbacks. Now, I mean, that's conjecture on Solom's part, because we're not actually completely sure about that. I believe the statute of limitations ran out on Comey. You are correct. This is what the Hamilton says, but we're going to talk about that. Halligan is a load of trouble regarding line about her grand jury presentation. She could easily be disbarred. The Republicans resigned over this case. I don't know anything about that. Maybe I'll have to look at that, Hamilton. However, let's get here to this James Comey situation. As done by Andrew McCarthy. This is what he says. Now, this is Andrew McCarthy, former federal prosecutor, writes for National Review. He's definitely one of these, I think he's straight shooter on some things he's not so much on. But here's what he says. The federal judge assigned to the role challenges to Lindsay Halligan's appointment as interim U.S. attorney has thrown out the indictments against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Leticia James on the ground that Halligan was not lawfully appointed. Correct. I like that wording much better than illegal done. It's just, it's a distinction without much of a difference, but there is a little bit of a difference here. Judge Cameron Curry dismissed the indictments without prejudice to the justice by re-indicting the cases. Not to toot my flute here, I think it's toot your own horn, but that's fine. But back in November 15, I told you this would happen. And then he links to his article that said, expect the Comey and James indictments to be dismissed without prejudice. The problem is twofold. First, the statute that governs interim U.S. attorney appointments, Section 546. You're not going to make me actually read that, are you? Okay. Here's what he says. Let's go back up here. As long as an indictment is brought forth correctly, and in other words, the charges themselves are not thrown out. Remember, Comey is now filed to have these dismissed for two different reasons, I think. And if that happens, then they might want to reconsider even bringing these cases again. However, let's just assume it's not. You can bring that back. As long as the original indictment was done within the statute of limitations, you can refile, okay, correctly with an actual attorney general that's legit, and you can bring those indictments to the court, and it still would satisfy the statute of limitations. So that goes to your answer there, or your question. You believe the statute of limitations have run out on Comey. They had run out within 5 days of her filing. Okay, let's see here. I just didn't. I was able to read this last night, but not today. So there you go, Andrew McCarthy. I'm not going to read your whole thing. But what do let's see here. Okay, let's take a look here and see what these ladies are saying here. I don't know if it's worth it, but we're going to play it anyway. Oops.
Okay, I'm going to bring in a little bit more legal help for us to understand what's going on. Former federal prosecutor Elise Adamson. Okay, Elise, you and I have talked a lot about Halligan, how she got into the role, and whether that would affect this case. Have you seen anything like this before?
Yeah, Audie, we just spoke about this a couple of days ago. I told you that I thought the case was a choose-your-own-adventure of procedural errors, and here we are, because this was a huge one. And as we also discussed, Halligan being appointed after the 120 days of the interim appointment had been exceeded was a huge problem. And indeed, the court agreed that she wasn't lawfully appointed. And the problem here is that Halligan did everything on her own. And so now these indictments can't stand. Now, with respect to have you seen anything like this before? I mean, I just heard the conversation. We did see the Mar-a-Lago case being dismissed on similar but different grounds. The legal grounds of why the Jack Smith Mar-a-Lago indictment was ultimately dismissed with Jack Smith's unlawful appointment is different here, but, similar broadly. But prior to these
Let me make a comment about that, because you're not going to see the same right-wingers crying about, judge legislating from the bench and these wicked left-wing judges. They weren't saying that when the judge threw out the Jack Smith indictment stuff, right? Mar-a-Lago.
These two indictments, not really, right? Like usually DOJ follows proper process and procedure. And now we see what happens when DOJ attempts to do an end run around those procedures. The cases have now been dismissed and probably delivered a humiliating defeat to the Trump administration.
Yeah, as they should. And this is, once again, this is all about doing things procedurally correct. You have a burden here. The government themselves, they have this huge burden that they must take, and especially as prosecutors they have. So the courts have to hold them accountable. Otherwise, it's exactly the shit. Let's go back to Trump being indicted, 30-some indictments about, was it that one or was it the rape one? One of those, might have been both of them, which had to do with the statute of limitations had run, but they were allowed to extend those statute of limitations. I think the legislature had done this almost specifically for Trump, but it had to do with the COVID stuff, so there was some delay. So they were able to extend them out. Okay, he wouldn't have even been indicted. So that's the kind of shit. If you don't want that, then you don't want the prosecutors being able to do underhanded shit, even if it's just technical. There's a reason for all of these little things. You may not like it, then go back in and change the constitution of how federal prosecutors are actually appointed. Maybe that's the answer. I want to look at. Hang on here. Oh yeah, so I don't know if the volume is so good on this one, but I'm going to play it anyway. Crank this volume up and, go in here. I think this is the best way we'll be able to do it. Okay, this is Pam Bondi talking about it.
Your reaction to the James Comey, Leticia James cases being dropped today. Back in Washington, James Comey put out a video. He said this matters most because a message has to be sent. The President of the United States cannot use the Department of Justice to target his political enemies. Your reaction to the cases being dropped into that specific message?
Sure, we'll be taking all available legal action, including an immediate appeal, to hold Leticia James and James Comey accountable for their unlawful conduct.
What is your reaction to his statement?
I'm going to keep going on this. I'm not worried about someone who has been charged with a very serious crime. His alleged actions were a betrayal of public trust.
Okay, I mean, first of all, perfectly fine. Go. I just think you're a buffoon when you're talking about it was a tech. I just don't see any way around this. I have it once again. Andrew McCarthy from the right is saying this. Reason Magazine, the left obviously, and then we play that. So we really get kind of a smattering of the views here, of people pretty much disagreeing with what you had to say. Let's see. I thought I had one other. Let's see what this guy has to say. I think he is coping out here. There's an overwhelming evidence. Former FBI Director James Comey lied to Congress and obstructed a Senate investigation into Crossfire Hurricane, the biggest scandal in American history. People, I'm sorry, Mike Davis, the biggest scandal in American history? Anybody want to chime in that that's the biggest scandal in American history? There's overwhelming evidence New York Attorney General Tish James lied in her mortgage application and bank fraud. Is that the next biggest scandal in American history? The prior attorney refused to prosecute these Democrat operatives, so the Attorney General picked a new one who was unafraid to follow the law. Who is the Democrat? What is the Democrats' response? Unsurprisingly, Obama judge hand-selected a Clinton judge. Yeah, we talked about how that process went. He picked this one. Then Clinton judge tossed both indictments. Okay, the first sentence of both nearly identical orders. Well, sure, it's under the same exact reason. You didn't have to get into the merits of the case. That's how bad you guys are as prosecutors here, or as administration. It's really not the prosecutors. Maybe prosecutors didn't want to put their name to it. I get it. I think bring these cases. I don't have a problem with that. I've said from the start, I think the best thing you can do, and I could be completely wrong, is the idea of mutually assured destruction, which is you have lawfare against Trump. Fine, let's bring it back the other way. Let's get this until the equilibrium's out. It almost feels like we've done that with social media stuff, right? Where now you're back to living a free life. Democrat politicians, including in robes. Oh wait, did I read that? First, nearly identical orders in which Clinton judge personally and gratuitously attacks Lindsey Halligan makes it crystal clear, this judge is a Democrat partisan. Now, that I don't necessarily disagree too much on. Let's take a look here, because here's the indictment here. Secured an indictment. Miss James now moves to was unlawfully appointed to install Miss Halligan as interim U.S. Attorney for Eastern District was invalid, and because Miss Halligan had no lawful authority to present the indictment. So does he not even include the part where he says she never had any? Oh, here, right here. I'm sorry, the first sentence. Former White House aide with no prior prosecutorial experience. Now, I actually think that is maybe a little bit gratuitous, but I think it's also important. I mean, that's going to go forward to the motives, because Comey is bringing about a motion to dismiss that this is personally motivated, specifically personally motivated. It could be, and this would have evidence that goes towards that. So you wonder if this judge may be kicking things out for that reason. But yeah, it is personally motivated. Does that mean that you shouldn't bring an indictment to it? Perhaps. I don't know. Democrat politicians, included in robes, shamefully protect their own. Unfortunately, we have two systems of justice. He didn't say that when Jack Smith dismissed when the Jack Smith charges were dismissed. One Democrat weaponizes against enemies, and one Democrat weaponizes to protect allies. The Justice Department must appeal. I'm sorry, you're just not going to win an appeal on this. And it must aggressively to bring charges against the lawfare Democrats of Fort Pierce, Florida. Now, I wanted to go over here because Hamilton, you've said here in the chat that I've read most of the briefs. The incompetence is staggering, and Halligan is certainly no match for Patrick Fitzgerald and Abby Lowell, two brilliant attorneys. I would like to know what case you're talking about, and if you want to send that to me, I'm on Twitter, Tyler Yankee on Twitter, TYLERJANKE on Twitter, or if you want to link to me any kind of stuff you send to me, I would love to have that. Respectfully, Bondi is a disgrace, especially in regards to Epstein, when she was a Florida AG and looked the other way for years. I mean, Bondi's horrible. Bondi is completely horrible. Did you know Did you know she registered at one point under Farah to represent Qatar? Does Mark Levin know that? No, she's been horrible. The whole binders thing has been hilarious because it's showed, and I've done shows on that. It shows the utter, first of all, the influencers that suddenly thought that they were some sort of alternative media got them their own asses handed to them by being allowed to be used like that, right? Their phone got taken away. They couldn't talk about this, and they had to show these things. It's like, are you really about pushing against corruption, or are you just a shill? Oh, you're just a shill. Okay, all those people, just remember, they're all shills, and you shouldn't listen to them unless you want to be propagandized in one way or another. And by the way, don't say respectfully about Bondi. She is a disgrace. You just heard the thing in the news conference there. Now, I'm not running for these offices, so you don't get to necessarily put me up in comparison, but just the way she talked, you could just tell, I am really gonna push forward. It's like, oh God. Mad about you. Okay, FBI Director Wray and AG Bill Barr should be questioned ASAP. Yes. Can't stand the Clintons. Look forward to congressional testimony. There's just not many people I'm fans of in government in general. So other than that, yeah. Okay, so we went through those things. I'm not going to read. I think I mentioned at the start, but if you're just in here, the last show I did a breakdown of Jonathan Pollard spying, espionage through the Soviet era, and I tried to tie all that together. I did a special, like a lot of work into this, had clips, banged them out. It didn't get very good views. I would implore you, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. I think it's pretty good work. So maybe I just won't do that anymore. Right? That took me a lot of time, and then I do something like this, and it seems to do just as good or better. So maybe that's just the way we'll go forward. I'm going to do probably one more show this week. I don't know if I'll do a Friday one because we have Thanksgiving and everything. Two things I want to announce. I'm going to do another show because I want to read a bunch of comments from that have been piling up recently. So I want to read some of those comments. Some of them about, let's go over this guy here. Have a new video on him. Okay, now Twitter's not working for me. Okay. There we go. Let's start with this loser, Andrew Wilson. So I did a video about him. I did a quick talked about him, and then I put it out as a reel type of thing, whatever, shorts, I guess is what it is. And people are kind of coming back, and some of them are defending, like, you don't think it's okay to be a stepfather? And I'm like, one, I was a stepfather, then I adopted these kids. That's not my point at all. And I kind of went back and forth with Jacob on this too, which is you have to understand who is professing to say what here. This guy goes on podcasts, one, argues with women. What have I said about Nick Fuentes going on Candace Owens? He then complains about the way she acted. I'm like, she's a woman. You are literally going onto a show, she's acting like a woman, and your response is to act also like a woman. Now, Andrew, oftentimes, I don't even know that he acts like a man. Maybe he does. He does act like a woman a lot. He likes to call into question people's IQ, about what whores they are. And I'm like, yeah, but you are going there arguing with whores. But then you've got this own situation that you're not even acknowledging on the side. And then when someone does bring it up, then you freak out about it. And they're like, oh, but she did an ad hominem. I'm like, did she though? I don't know. I think if you're professing, if you're the preacher, as an example, right, is telling you how to live your life. And then you're like, but wait a second, you are, you're stealing money from the church. You have a prostitute. And he's like, oh, you're bringing my family into this? Why would you do that? It's like, well, because you're professing about a way to live. I do this, right? I talk about my kids and my family and, being respectful. It's literally what I'm doing. If you caught me, as an example, doing something that I'm talking about, then it's not me, you're bringing up ad hominems or attacking my family. Now, this one here is somewhat embarrassing because he talks about IQ stuff. I'm not even going to play it here, but that was just one other example of some things I thought was funny. He smokes cigarettes. I don't take his opinions seriously. Yeah, exactly. First rule of Man Club, don't argue with women. Yeah, you're a good man, Charlie Brown. Adoption is an incredible act of selflessness and humanity. I appreciate that. I've had some people online. You can have your opinions. This is all my point too. You can be like, I can call him out. Kyle Matovic, been on the show before. He's a nice guy. But he said before that, adoption or being a stepfather is cucking, right? And I'm just like, I don't know. I could be as extreme there and say, has your wife ever had sex with someone else besides you, like before you guys met? If that's the case, can I call her a whore? I just don't think that that's the way it is. And there's sometimes, like my wife, you make mistakes, you move on from them. I mean, she married a guy when she was really young, and they had two kids together. And then this guy, turns out to not be so great due to some addiction problems that weren't there at the time. So you get out, you protect your kids, you marry me. It's going to be 13 years coming up here in 5 days, okay? And then, I was stepdad to them, and they were, all their kids are just enmeshed. They're like their siblings, and now they're my kids. And, I don't know about the act of humanity and selflessness. I was privileged to do it. They're wonderful, wonderful children. Very proud of them, as if they are my own. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm actually pretty stoked about that. It's been almost a year. We did this adoption last year at Christmas, which was pretty cool. So I work in family law, and I go to the family court all the time. And that's the one we went and did, and I was, be able to do it in front of judges and clerks and stuff that I work in all the time. That was pretty cool. All the family gets to go. It's like they get to come to my job, and we're doing something. So that was pretty cool. That attitude presumes any children the result of a divorce did leaving them, etc. Don't deserve a good father. Yeah, thank you for the kind words there. Once again, though, I have no problem with these guys, like whether it's Andrew. I'm more mocking Andrew as an example, right? He goes on there and he mocks people all the time for not having his views. Okay, fine. If he were to come at me about something about my personal life, I wouldn't care. I just don't give a crap about that. Kyle, any of these others that would want, I don't know if that's still his attitude. It was his attitude several years ago. Maybe he's changed a bit there. And maybe he wouldn't say it to me personally, but I don't care. I'm a divorce attorney, but I'm not a fan of divorce. I've been divorced, okay? And I have my own personal reasons for that. Nice lady, great mother, whatnot, but it didn't work out. And my goal in life was to show my kids like a loving relationship, which I think we've definitely done. So anyway, all these things, just don't get worked up over other people's attitudes towards you. That is the formation of where you start to talk about the woke shit, right? Where you're so concerned about other people's ideals of you that you do things maybe that you wouldn't normally do. You start to act. Next thing you know, you're killing a bunch of people over in Gaza. I'm just kidding. Okay, so go to tyleryonke.substack.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe this whole thing. Check out the last video I did about Jonathan Pollard and everything. I put way too much work to not at least get a few hundred views on that thing. So give it a shot. But other than that, I think we're out for the day. But look back. Well, it's again, if you at least are over here subscribing, then you'll be able to see when I pop up again. I'll try to give a better notice. Like I said, I want to go through a bunch of comments. I'll do another show the end of this week at some point. But happy Thanksgiving to everybody. That's first and foremost what I want to say. Hope everyone enjoys it. Glad you rejoined me here for the end of the show. At least this one is. Life is nuanced. Yeah, it is.
Get it.
All right. See ya.
Power.
Whose cross stripes and bright stars through the
treason is it? Never mind.